If you wish, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, he stretched out his hand, touched the leper, and said to him, "I do will it. Be made clean." The leprosy left him immediately, and he was made clean. Then, warning him sternly, he dismissed him at once. Then he said to him, "See that you tell no one anything, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses prescribed. That will be proof for them." The man went away and began to publicize the whole matter. He spread the report abroad so that it was impossible for Jesus to enter a town openly. He remained outside in deserted places, and people kept coming to him from everywhere. The Gospel of the Lord. Yesterday, I told you that Jesus' principal mission was to preach the gospel. And he doesn't like to be applauded. He doesn't like to be praised. He doesn't do good in order to receive a round of applause. No. God's ways are not our ways. And we do not understand God's ways for some reasons. Notice what we heard in the first reading. "And I said, they have always been of erring heart, and they do not know my ways." And then the author of the letter to the Hebrews provides us with an answer to the question, why do we err? Why do we not know God's ways? And notice what he says. "Encourage yourselves daily while it is still today, so that none of you may grow hardened by the deceit of sin." Sin blurs our mind, and therefore a good use of our will, of our freedom. Sin does not allow us to understand God's ways. Maybe one might have said to Jesus, "Hey, you know how much money we can make with your miracles?" That is sin acting in us. Because sometimes one of the consequences of sin is that we become calculating people and materialistic people. Christ's ways are not our ways. We do not understand him because of sin. And the other important lesson that we can draw from this passage of the gospel is that we have to constantly remind or constantly remember God's gifts, God's love and blessings, so that our hearts do not grow hardened. Notice this, something beautiful that we heard. "Harden not your hearts as at the rebellion in the day of testing in the desert, where your ancestors tested and tried me and saw my works for 40 years. Take care, brothers and sisters, that none of you may have an evil and unfaithful heart, so as to forsake the living God. We have to treasure God's blessings. All those works God has done for us, so that we do not harden our hearts, so that our hearts do not become evil and unfaithful and ungrateful, so that we may use God's blessings to serve Him, to grow in love of Him, and not to turn those blessings, those gifts against Him, as the leper did. The leper did it. Notice that once Jesus told him, hey, do not say anything about this to anyone. And the first thing he does is, the man went away and began to publicize the whole matter. He spread the report abroad. He disobeyed Jesus. He turned against Him the miracle He did for him. His heart became evil and unfaithful and disobedient because of his ingratitude. So let us first understand God's ways. If Jesus says, do not do this, let us not do it. In this case, He wanted to preach the gospel. He wanted to preach the gospel. And His miracles were there to give support to His preaching, to His message, to the gospel. First, He preached, and then He performed miracles to give support to His preaching. But He couldn't do that because of the disobedience of the former leper. So first of all, let us use Christ's gifts to grow in the love of Him. And as a response to that, to those blessings, to those miracles, to that goodness, to that mercy, let us do His will. And then let us try to have Christ's mind. Christ's mind. Let us see life, our circumstances, from God's perspective, through God's gaze. And that's why we need to be purified, to live according to God's will, so that we may understand His ways. Let us pray in silence.